Welcome, everybody. My name is Christian, and I am joined by my brother Nick.
Hey.
And today we're going to talk about the Star Wars Anthology films and our thoughts about what potential ones could come in the future. So, Disney has recently announced that they're going to make one Star Wars movie a year forever. And I am perfectly fine with that. In a world where we have, one to three Marvel movies a year, and those are just one segment of superhero movies, one movie a year is perfectly fine. The Star Wars universe is massive. There's plenty to pull from, and that's what we're going to discuss in this series.
It seems to be a gradual trend in Hollywood studios to have their movies be in continuity with each other.
Nowadays. So there was a time where sequels didn't make as much as the original film. Empire Strikes Back did not make as much money as Star Wars. So there was a time in the early days of cinema until the 70s and 80s where that was true. Sequels did not sell well. However, now where you get this brand awareness and you get this juggernaut that just keeps on going. But here's a good example. Everyone agrees that The Matrix, the first one, is the best of the three. Well, guess what? Which one made the most money? The second Matrix movie made way more money than the first one. Now, it didn't make as much. The third one didn't do as well because the second one really wasn't all that great, and the third one was even worse. But that still shows even though that is not the best one, the first one is the best one. Everyone agrees on that, but it still didn't make the most amount of money. These movies, they do better because they build up on their own momentum. Everyone that saw the one prior is going to go see the next one, and in between that year, they get the buzz. And so, franchises are just the way things are. However, with Star Wars, it makes sense. It is a massive universe. They've been writing books and games. There's been a Star Wars game almost every year since Star Wars came out. And there's been books, there's been countless books. There's been a lot of them are taken out of canon, but there are multiple books every year since the 90s when the book explosion out. So there's a huge, just like with the comic book movies, there is a large pool to draw from to get ideas for these anthology films. So the first of these anthology films is Rogue One. Rogue One is a great idea. So the opening crawl of A New Hope brings in this gap perfectly for this movie to fill. It's been a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first major victory against the evil Galactic Empire. During the battle, Rebel spies managed to steal the secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star. That's all it is. That is where you're squeezing this anthology in. It says it's their first major victory. They're striking from a hidden base, and a bunch of Rebel spies managed to steal the plans of the Death Star. That's all that is given. And that is more than enough to make a really interesting movie. It looks like, and I hope this is going to be a gritty war film that has no Jedi, and they're just soldiers fighting for a cause that they believe in. And of course, Darth Vader is going to be in this movie because, as we see in the intro to A New Hope, he knows that the Death Star plans have been stolen, and he's hunting down the ships that got the last transmission. I suspect that the last shot or the last scene of this movie is going to be whoever the survivors are of this original crew are going to be sending those messages to the Tantive 4, and then bam, Star Wars Episode 4, in the timeline. This is a great idea. Soldiers, it's going to be a war movie. It's going to be the Saving Private Ryan, Casino Royale. I have a lot of hope for this movie, and this is a good intro for what these anthology films could be. not only could they be completely unique spin-offs and trilogies, but these could be filling in the interesting gaps in the side stories and bringing in new characters that we don't know about that were there all along, and the unsung heroes that allowed Princess Leia to get those Death Star plans that then allowed Luke to ultimately destroy the space station. Now the next anthology movie, most like they're already working on it, and in terms of what's going to come after Episode 8, is going to be the young Han Solo movie. There's a lot of potentials for storylines, so I'm just going to go over a few of those. This is going to be the one that I'm going to pitch, even though it's already been announced, but I'm going to go over some of the storylines that they could go into. His smuggling days with Jabba the Hutt. His adventures with Lando Calrissian and how he managed to win the Millennium Falcon from him, which I'm sure there's been a whole series of owners, but the one prior to Han Solo was Lando Calrissian. Of course, they're going to either flashback or they're going to actually show how Han Solo and Chewie first meet. In the old expanded universe, which is no longer canon, he was an Imperial officer ordered to kill Chewie and other Chewbacca's, and he didn't. Instead, he rescued him, thus earning Chewie's life debt. Internal friendship to him. So I'm sure in either, at the very least, a flashback they're going to show that, but maybe they'll show that whole sequence of events. And something that I'm curious about is, why doesn't Han believe in the Force? He's older than Luke, and he should have been a child during the Clone Wars, or maybe even a teenager. Why doesn't he believe in the Force? Is this just one of the many canon plot holes that New Hope has created because of like the expanded universe has gone into it? But if you look at Star Wars Rebels, they're showing all these holo videos of how the war's progressing and the heroics of the Jedi. How could this guy who was growing up during that period not believe in the Force? Was he in some backwater planet? But Corellia really isn't a backwater planet, so that doesn't make much sense. What is the Kessel Run, and why is it a unit of distance that he gives ability to go through it? Are they going to explain that, or are they going to maybe just hint at it for a little bit? I'm sure it would be a good idea to have run-ins with other bounty hunters such as Greedo and Boba Fett, hinting at the demise that he would lead to both of them. So the young Han Solo, it wouldn't have been my first or my second choice of what things they're going to do, but Han Solo is a popular character. There's a lot to flesh out with him, a lot of time period before A New Hope that they could bring into, and a great opportunity for to bring in a new actor to play him. So the next movie I would recommend would be Obi-Wan. He was easily one of the best aspects of the entire prequel trilogy, and Ian McGregor's portrayal of Obi-Wan was spot on. He did a great job, and he really made the character his own. And unlike a lot of the other actors of the prequel, he actually enjoyed being Obi-Wan. We know most of Obi-Wan's story. We see him as a Padawan, we see him as a Jedi Knight, and we see him as a Jedi Master. And through the Clone Wars, we see him as a general and a member of the Council quite exclusively. I wouldn't want to see him during that prequel era anymore. However, between episodes 3 and 4, there are 20 years of story not told. I would love Ian McGregor to return to the role and have his own movie, possibly his own trilogy, as well as having him dotted here and there in holograms to have him appear in other movies. For his own anthology movie or trilogy, he could be rescuing young Jedi from Order 66 and helping them find refuge. He could be protecting Luke and his family from unseen foes, maybe even gangsters and run-ins with Jabba the Hutt. And best yet, he could be confronting and defeating Darth Maul, whom watchers of the Clone Wars survived his fall in Episode 1.
The next obvious anthology film would be for Boba Fett. Now, it is quite amazing just how popular Boba Fett became, even though he had a maximum of 5 lines. One of them is him falling into the Sarlacc pit. We got to see him as a child in Attack of the Clones, and then in the Clone Wars cartoon, we got to see him organize and interact within the underground. But I think what should happen is the film opens up with Boba Fett escaping the Sarlacc pit. We obviously need to have that scene in the movie. But we also show him looking back on his roots, discovering a Mandalorian culture, particularly about being warriors, and him trying to find a family, even though that he is technically a clone.
I agree. I think any Boba Fett movie should take place after the Battle of Endor. I think any Boba Fett movie should show him coming out from the Sarlacc pit and his adventures from there. However, I'm perfectly fine with Boba Fett being shown in Rogue One or in ObiWan. Like, he should be a side character just hinted at and barely shown in other movies, but he shouldn't get his own anthology film set prior to that one. Let him be mysterious. You can go ahead and have Boba Fett just be one of the bounty hunters hired out after him. Or maybe he says he's not going to take the bounty, he's going to focus on someone else, and so Greedo is going to be shown to hunt him down next, or something like that. Don't have him be the main antagonist of an anthology film. However, you can have him thrown in there of maybe after the original Death Star is blown up, maybe he's being commissioned to try to find out whoever the pilot was that blew up the Death Star, which they go into the old canon. But his escape from the Sarlacc pit, him refinding himself, him finding a new purpose in life post the Battle of Endor and the New Republic forming, these are all a really rich time that they could flesh out the character as much as he wants. Maybe he even goes back to Mandalore and unites the people and has that planet be independent. Maybe not in the Empire or the Republic, but an independent planet. Boba Fett's a really interesting character, and if they're careful with it, they can expand him without ruining the mystery that was behind him.
Right.
The next anthology film possibility, and probably even a whole trilogy, could be made from Kyle Katarn. He's the hero of the Dark Forces and Jedi Knight series, and I love these games. Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast was one of the best lightsaber combat of any game. And Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy was a great continuation of that, of him being the Jedi Master of new upcoming apprentices being taught at the new Jedi Academy run by Luke Skywalker. The canon's obviously going to have to be changed around to fit what has happened post The Force Unleashed, but you could still bring back Kyle Katarn. Like many other heroes during this time frame, he started out as an Imperial, learning about his powers and deserting, fearing of what the Empire would do to him as a Force user. Unlike Finn, who left because he didn't want to kill innocent people. He left for his own safety. After fleeing, he could become a mercenary and slowly learn more and more about his powers and what it means to be a Jedi. He can meet Jan Ors, who's his co-pilot and love interest, an important character throughout the series. And the other movies could take place before the original trilogy, during the original trilogy, and afterwards. And it would just flesh out that original trilogy time frame, and maybe even have him helping Luke creating the new Jedi Order. However, it's going to be a little bit difficult to play with because Luke and Leia are obviously very old, so any interactions with them, instead of having them actually on film, would probably have to be done through holo messages if they're going to be shown them interacting with the original cast at all.
Hollywood has proven to us through Ant-Man that you can de-age a person through computer effects and make it effective.
Yeah, that's true. What they did in Ant-Man was really interesting. So, with Kyle Katarn, just have him start before the Battle of Yavin, before the Death Star's correction, just being an Imperial. And then show him that will be his first movie and him leaving and maybe becoming a mercenary. The next one with him being reluctantly being brought into the Rebel Alliance and helping them out here and there. And then the third movie will be him as a full Jedi and taking on the remnant of the Empire or as some kind of Sith cult. And you could therefore hint at the Knights of Ren. You could maybe even little rumors of this Snoke character. It's this great time period after the Battle of Endor, but before The Force Awakens, where you could really flesh this period out. Another anthology film that I would propose is Lost Stars. I love this book. I've said it in so many different videos, and I could do a whole video just describing the story of Lost Stars, and I have. And
it would be great if the couple may make a cameo in Rebels.
That's true. These two main characters should appear in some media outside of this original book. Star Wars Rebels would be a great idea. You could show them as a aspect of the Empire that isn't so heartless and isn't so ruthless. They think they're doing the right thing, especially early on. They should be brought in Star Wars Rebels, but they could have their own movie that just focuses on them, about those two, and the war that brings them apart, and them ultimately coming back together. I don't know if it would fit all that well, because they meet important character after important character, but they should be brought in to different media. Star Wars Rebels would be a great one. Maybe some of the other anthology films, but the characters of Lost Stars need to be brought in. Another character which I don't know if he should get his own anthology film, but I would love to see him be brought in somewhere, and maybe he, by the time you're listening to this, already has, but Grand Admiral Thrawn. During Palpatine's New Order was very xenophobic, and many alien races suffered injustices from the Empire. Thrawn was a Sith and one of the very few non-humans to rise in the rank of the Empire's military. His tactical abilities were just too great to ignore. It would be great to have a non-force using villain. The Star Wars doesn't need to be about the battle of the light versus the dark. It could be good versus evil just by normal people. Normal people who, through their own sheer will and intelligence, are also important characters, not just the very few magic-using Jedi and Sith. We could see him putting back the pieces after the Battle of Endor and maybe ultimately contributing to the form of the First Order.
Oh, Kyle Katarn versus Thrawn.
Maybe.
You gotta admit, you would love it.
I would love it. So these are some ideas that I want to see in books, games, and comics, but not the movies. Shadows of the Empire. I love this book. When I was a young kid, I read this book over and over again, and I really enjoyed it. I don't want to recast Luke, Leia, Lando, or any of the other main characters, because this story takes place in between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Unless it was animated or with the original cast doing voiceover, I don't want this to be its own movie. However, it could easily be a game that is considered canon. It could be brought out as its own animated movie. It could just be re-released as another canon book. It's a story that is great, but unfortunately, just due to the ages and trying to recreate every aspect of that time period, it's just too messy, and I don't want to do it. I love Yoda. He's awesome. but I don't think he can carry a movie on his own. I don't think any CG character should ever carry their own movie. It's just too limiting. And I would love to go back to the Old Republic, as I'll mention later, but I want to go back even further in the Old Republic, not within Yoda's lifespan. Anakin and Obi-Wan, between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, it's an interesting time period, but the age difference will be a problem. How could Ian McGregor play Obi-Wan? He'll be even older, and then in the timeline, Attack of the Clones happens, and he somehow magically got even younger. And we got plenty of their interactions during the Clone Wars TV. We don't need to see any of that time period. Same reason with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan. There were some books that were blown up in the last canon that I'm sure they could rework and bring back. I don't want to see a movie or live action of it because of those age differences. So, the Old Republic. The Old Republic is something that I'm sure many Star Wars fans and any fans of the early 2000s Star Wars game have been clamoring for them to do in another media. The Old Republic was amazing, and you could easily do a whole trilogy on Darth Revan and his rise and his fall, and spoiler alerts, his redemption. It will be perfect. There's so much to be brought in, and it takes place thousands of years before the main Star Wars trilogy. So you could do whatever you want. I mean, you can't do whatever you want. Like, certain planets would still have to exist. But you don't need to worry about any kind of continuity, any kind of characters that you bring in. It'll just be a completely different Star Wars. That you could maybe hint, like they do in the game, of what are the origins of the Sand People? Why are the trees on Kashyyyk so freaking huge? How did the Republic form? What was before the Old Republic? What are the origins of the Jedi? These are all things that are just crying to be further to explore, to be brought in. And a Darth Revan trilogy would be perfect. In another aspect, which will be an anthology film off of this new Old Republic trilogy, you could easily do one about the early Jedi and the origins of the Rule of Two for the Sith, Darth Plagueis.
Well, that is if he's been revealed to be President Snoke in the next movie.
Supreme Leader.
Supreme Leader Snoke.
But the Old Republic, it is shouting for its own trilogy. And maybe after they do episodes 8, 9, maybe they'll go ahead and jump and do another named trilogy during the Old Republic period. And then have these anthology films come out in between those. So those are some of our ideas for Star Wars anthology films. There's many more. Some of them really can't be worked anymore due to canon issues and like how things went into Force Awakens. But overall, as you saw in my review from The Force Awakens, I'm perfectly fine with The Force Awakens and what they did. And these are the stories that can pick out of the old expanded universe and bring back and have them make many billions of dollars. And some of which will be mine that I very happily hand over to Disney. Thank you for making more Star Wars movies.